I was brought up in a Christian family, so we would go to church every Sunday, and from a very young age, I knew that Christianity was not what I believed in. I was actually in church and we had to write a song about God, and my song was Jesus and God, Jesus and God. It was like a little rap. I remember the pastor came over to me, he grabbed the piece of paper and he scribbled it out and he said, "No, Jesus is God." And it's from this moment, maybe I was about 7 years old, when I realised that Christianity it's not for me. I continued to go to church for many years, because it was the closest thing that I believed in. I always believed in one God. And from the age of about 14 years old, I began to work in like a social club. It was like a working men's type club. And I actually ended up starting to sing because I wanted to get into singing. I became a jazz singer. So from the age of about 14 onwards, I was actually a professional jazz singer. Now, my parents decided that they didn't want me to go to a local school because it was quite a white area, there's a lot of racist people there as well. Plus the education wasn't that good in that area, so they sent me to the other side of Manchester. And in this school, it's quite a mixed school. You have people from different backgrounds, a lot of Africans there, a lot of people from the Caribbean, Asian people, different people. So it was a mixture of different nationalities and cultures and religions. So it was a good thing for me to go there. A lot of Africans from like Sierra Leone, mainly West Africa, like Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and it became quite an African area. And I came into contact with some friends from Sierra Leone, and we started to do business together. Eventually we ended up going to West Africa. Now, around this time, I was singing. I was, doing my jazz music. I was also DJing in the clubs. I was DJing like hip hop and R&B, stuff like this. Like, I was contacted by Sway. I did a track with him, and actually my career was actually doing well. I was getting a lot of gigs. I was singing on cruise ships and singing in different football stadiums and venues, and it's becoming quite good. And this is really what I wanted to do. I was just concentrating on doing this dream. So at the age of 18, a lot of Africans moved into my area. It became quite an African area. A lot of people from West Africa, like Sierra Leone, Nigeria. I became friends with some Sierra Leone brothers, and they were Muslim by name. They some of their family were Muslim, but they didn't really know much about Islam. But anyway, we began to do business, and eventually I had to travel to Africa, to Sierra Leone. We were selling cars, and I was also getting involved in studying diamonds and learning about diamonds. So this is like the path which I wanted to take, because this is what my friends were doing. And it was good money, it was just, living the life, trying to make as much money as we can, enjoying life, spending it, wasting it all away. This is what we was doing. And it's over 90% Muslim, and this was the first time I actually heard the call to prayer, the adhan. It really made me think, what is this? And it made me want to know more about Islam, and at the time I was actually stuck because I was only supposed to be in Senegal for maybe 2 or 3 days, and I told the hotel manager, because I was actually stranded there for over 2 weeks and I didn't have any money to pay for the hotel. I told the hotel manager, and he said, "No problem, come to my house." So the hotel manager took me to his house, and he was a Muslim. I was a bit scared to go to his house at first because, I just thought Muslims are all terrorists and all the things I'd heard were all bad things. But I had no option. I couldn't phone home because my parents didn't even know I was in Africa. So, I had to go to his house. I went to his house, and this is where I heard the adhan. And while I was there, his grandmother died. His grandmother passed away, and she was over 100 years old. And he was crying on the bed. And I remember putting my arm around him and saying, "Look, she'll go to a better place," just trying to comfort him. And he said, "I'm not crying because she died." He said, "I'm crying because I wanted you to meet her, because I wanted her to make dua for you, that you would be a Muslim." He said, "Because she's an old woman and Allah will answer her du'as." And this really touched me, because I thought, the guy's not even upset because she died. He's in full belief that she's going somewhere better, which I wasn't, trying to comfort him. And it made me want to know more about Islam. So a lot of misconceptions were cleared up there. So this was at like the beginning of me looking into Islam, to start to look just for interest, just because I wanted to know what these Muslims believe, because they're nice people. So over the years, I actually moved on to Sierra Leone. We was getting involved in business and things like this, and it was actually for many years, like my friends, they would go to certain people in Sierra Leone who was dealing with witchcraft. They was dealing, they have different names for it, like juju or voodoo. They'd be involved in these rituals where they would be contacting the unseen world, like the jinn, for help. So they ask the jinn to go and do some things for them, whether it's in business or whatever they're doing for protection. I believed that the world of the jinn existed, because the things I'd witnessed in Africa and even in London, when I was staying with my friends in like South London, this is happening, that I believed in it, And when I came back to England, I told my Libyan friend, I told him what I'd witnessed in Africa about all this juju and these supernatural things happening. And he said, yeah, in Islam we believe in this, but this is illegal. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to communicate with these things. It's illegal in Islam. And he showed me a lecture by Dr. Bilal Phillips, which explained the world of the jinn. And this actually was the beginning of me actually maybe believing that the Qur'an might be from that God which I believe in. Because I've always believed in the one God. But from this point, this was when I was actually questioning maybe the Qur'an is from that God, from the God that I believe in. So I started to look more into the Qur'an. And finally I began to believe in it, start to believe in Islam, start to look into it. And I started to pray in my own way. I fasted the month of Ramadan in my bedroom at home, and it wasn't until about 6 months to a year later I went to Egypt, Cairo. I went to see a friend of mine in Cairo, and I went to the first mosque, because I'd never been in a mosque before, because I was quite scared of going in mosques. Again, I had a lot of misconceptions in all this. I was scared to go in the mosque, and I went to the mosque. And I asked my friend, I said, can you teach me how to pray properly? And he said, no. He said, because you're not a Muslim. I said, I'm a Muslim, I pray, I fast, I try. He said, no, you have to say the Shahada. And I didn't know what the Shahada was. I said, what's the Shahada? He said, this is a declaration of faith, to declare that there's nothing worthy of worship except Allah and Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the final messenger. So this is when I actually embraced Islam, officially.